Hello and good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Unofficial Tour Series here on RGT Cycling. Thanks for joining us for event 2 in this 7-event series. So today we are going to the Croydon circuit down in South London, and this is going to be an exciting race. It's an interesting little course, and we'll bring you the details of that up in a minute. And yeah, thanks to the organizer of the event for bringing this together. So Simon Russell, he's the guy behind this, and the PDQ coaching team. So thanks a lot to those guys for organizing this and putting it together. So we kicked off on Tuesday, just gone with Salisbury, and then today we are going into Croydon, as I mentioned, South London. And then next week we are off to Aberystwyth over in the west of Wales. And then we are heading to Northwich, then up to Durham in the north of England, Motherwell up in Scotland, and then we are finishing week 7 back down in the south of England at the Brooklyn circuit. So we are covering all corners of Great Britain, up and down, east and west, and these are taking place on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So this is week 1, race number 2, and then there's 2 for the next couple of weeks, and then finishing at the end of March. So here we have the current series results, current standings. The race is split into 2 divisions: Class A, which is for 3.8 watts per kilo and above average, and then B for riders under that. So we have Joe Rees, who's currently leading the Class A event. He took a very good win on Tuesday. He was very animated throughout the race, lots of attacks, and he managed to go early in the final sprint and hold on from the chasing trio of myself, Raul Lopez, and James Malville. The series itself is actually based on your 5 best results. So you are able to skip a couple, as I'm doing today, and still be in the hunt. So we'll see who we have on the start line for Class A shortly, and we will take a quick look at the Class B classification. So this was a well-attended race, and it was Gareth Spiridonov who took the win there, followed by Angus Smith and Martin Deals. You can see the points there is based on the Tour Series points themselves. It does tail off quite quickly, so if you're finishing even 10th, you could be in a bunch sprint not that far behind the winner, but you're only picking up 29 points. So yeah, you really do need to be fighting for those front 3 positions to really be picking up the points each week. So this is the Croydon circuit. You can see there it's a rectangular shape, but there's this interesting little indent in the middle where riders will come down a little dip, round a hairpin, and then back up the other side. So that's clearly going to be a place for attacks, a place where the field might split a little bit, and where riders are really going to have to be on the money, knowing what's happening and being alert, because that's an area where they could risk being dropped. It's a slightly uphill drag to the finish line. There's not much elevation change overall. It's actually only about 15 meters per lap of elevation change, but there's a little drag from the start line. The start line itself is pretty much on that long straight opposite that hairpin. So there'll be a nice straight run into the finish line, no one getting caught out in the corners. And it's about 1.2 kilometers overall lap distance. So we're about 30 seconds out now from the start of the race. So if we cut over to the start lines and have a little look to see who we've got there. So there we go, Class A on the left, Class B over on the right-hand side. So we are doing a 30.9 kilometer long race today. So that is 25 laps of the circuit. And we've got a slightly small field on the left-hand side. A few of the riders that we had on Tuesday, and they're already straight off to a fast start. We've got PDQ coach here, who I think finished 5th or 6th on the Tuesday race. Team A as well, also from the PDQ team. They're hitting that first right-hand corner. And then a good sized bunch in the Class B race. Because of the way the fields are split, actually, it is really sort of top end riders in Class A. So you will find that that will be a slightly smaller field size, just because of the threshold that it is set at for that level, for that race. So on the right hand side, we've got a good pack size there of around about 24 or so still in that group. As they come round, you can see there the road just to the left hand side. You can see the level change as they come around the hairpin for the first time. A couple of riders on the inside there just getting the swing around there, and then it's straight into a little downhill section and then back uphill. So a little bit there where it looked about 9%, so we'll check that out on the next lap. Keep an eye on that. And then they will start to come up to the far end of the circuit where they'll hang a right and then another right, and then they'll be into a downhill section before that slow drag back up to the finish line. So 6 riders in this group on the A race then, all together at the moment. No one's been dropped, and they're all going to be in for a hat load of points today. So it's a good race to get into early on, because you find that there's not necessarily that many riders there, so you can pick up a good amount of points. There's Team A here. You can see he's putting in a bit of an effort to get to that line, trying to create a bit of animation in this race, making everybody work hard. As they commence lap 2, you can see his power numbers up in the left-hand corner of the screen. So he's up over 450 watts there. Just putting some pressure in. He's created a little bit of a gap. It's early in the race to be trying to go off solo, I'd have thought. So whether he's just trying to keep riders on their toes, looking to drop a rider or two, or maybe just trying to create a little bit of a rest for his colleague JPDQ. And we might find a little bit of team tactics with those two. And also there's a C McDonald as well there, also from PDQ. So they've got 3 in the pack out of the 6 riders. And then there's a K Jarvis. He's in the blue kit with the lime green band across the back. So that's the team kit for Herd. And then there's Lopez in the black kit there, just at the back of that pack. And there's a Jay Rusinek, who at the moment has just been slightly gapped. He's currently 15 meters at the back. He's got some red power numbers there as he's trying to get back into contact with this pack. It's actually early in the race. You don't want to be getting dropped early on, because it's going to be a long solo effort otherwise. But it looks like he's struggling just to get back on to make contact. So we're on board now with the Class B, and looks like there's been a little bit of separation, but still a good number of riders in this front group. As Hepburn and Spiridonov there taking the inside line as they cross the line for the second time. You can see there's around about 21 riders currently in this group. There's Simon Russell just coming around the inside there in the KISS Racing Team kit, the organiser of today's event. Thanks for tuning in, Stuart Featherstone, getting involved on the YouTube chat there. If you are watching on YouTube or on Facebook, then please do drop us a message and we will try and give you a shout out. As well, Daniel Fonseca there, tuning in from Portugal. So we've got an international broadcast today. So thanks a lot, everyone, for tuning in and supporting the stream and the races. So back to the action on the road then, as we go to the split screen. And it looks like in the Class A race that Rusinek has managed to get back into touch with those 5 riders. So that's going to be good news for him. And on the Class B race, they're actually pretty much level pegging with the Class A race. Obviously, the slightly bigger pack is helping them go a little bit faster, even though comparatively you would argue, are less powered. So a little bit of an international field there. Quite a few Brits, as you'd expect, as this is focusing on the British Tour Series. but we've got a French rider here off the front, and then we've got some American riders. I can see a German flag there, Scottish flag, so obviously British, a Czech rider, and then I think Spiridonov is Estonian, although I might be corrected on that. If anyone else knows for sure, then please do let me know. Hi there, Chris O'Hearn. Again, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, it's easier watching than racing. As I said, I raced in the Class A on Tuesday, and it was, despite being a slightly smaller field, that did actually make it quite animated. Riders were able to jump off the front, get away a little bit. They didn't have a big pack chasing them down every time. You really had to play tactics and think, am I going to try and close it down myself? Is this the move that I want to jump across and try and help? Whereas when you have a larger pack, sometimes it's much harder to get away because that pack has got more momentum, and it can easily close down any gaps. So I did find that it was a really fun and interesting race on Tuesday. So yeah, good question there from Stuart in the chat. What's the difference between Class A and Class B? So it's just to create a bit of separation, just so that we can create a bit of sort of more competitive riding. So Class A is defined as 3.8 watts per kilo for your FTP and above. Or if you're a British racing license holder, it's essentially Cat 1 or Cat 2 on the UK system. And then Class B would be under 3.8 watts per kilo, or a license holder, which is a Category 3 or Category 4, and Category 4 being the lowest in the UK, and that's sort of your beginner's level. So yeah, the 3.8 is actually quite a high standard. So that's partly why we're seeing a slightly smaller field size there. But it's also just so that Class B gives people a bit more of a chance. They're not just coming into a crit race and having to hang on for dear life for the whole time and getting spat out the back. So it's just a way to create two interesting races which have a bit more evenness between the riders. But yeah, if anyone else has any questions, then do feel free to pop them in the chat, and I will try and ask. Oh, Estonia, Chris is saying, is blue, black and white. Maybe it's Lithuania then, is the red, green and yellow. I think Belarus is red, green and white. So, also getting geography lessons today on the live streams. We're not just commenting on the racing, we're also informative around many, many factors. So on the Class B race then, looks like we've got a little bit of a small break just off the front. Doesn't look to be going too far out the front. So that's B Schwartz. Yeah, looks like that's just come back together now. He's been reeled in by the pack. As I was saying, it's quite tricky when you're a solo rider and you've got 15 or 16 riders or so behind you to be able to stay away. You do need to put in a strong effort to try and snap that elastic and give you an opportunity. Sometimes you can do that using the terrain and the topography. When you've got a small little bump, you can lay down the power and shoot up it nice and quick. And if the chasing pack doesn't respond quick enough and they just go off at their normal speed, you can create a little bit of a gap. Or using the hairpin or the corners as well, because the pack will potentially come into that a bit slower and you can push out of it. We are seeing there on the Class B quite often riders attacking through that start-finish line. And Class A as well, that we've got Lopez here. He's putting in a bit of a strong effort as we come round to start what is lap 7, I think. We're around about a quarter of the way into the race now. Right-hand side, that Class B, still a good sized group, but here we go. Schwartz once again putting some pressure on at the front, and a few riders just hanging on for dear life at the back of that group. And he has now managed to create a bit of separation, 25 meters back to P Dring here from Schwartz. But that's going to be a strong effort from Schwartz to hold off this group. We're still 24 kilometers from the finish line. So there's a long way to go just yet. So I'd be surprised to see Schwartz staying away, but what it does do is it puts the pack under pressure, puts everyone else under pressure. So if you're already on the limit and using the draft as a bit of a safety blanket, you could find that with a little bit of the pace upping, you can be in trouble and falling off the back of that pack. So you just need to watch out for those attacks. The elevation map for the course is available just in the top right hand corner. If we go back to a single screen view, or we might be able to bring it up for you, just the course elevation. But yeah, in the top right hand corner, what you can see there is that shows the rider's position on the course, and that white line is the elevation up and down. This is also showing you 1 kilometer ahead and 1 kilometer back. So on a short crit circuit like this, that does overlap a little bit, but you can see that there is a little bit of a rise and then a short little dip, and then a little rise again and back down towards the start line. And if you're within RGT itself and you're riding, you can call up a larger full elevation chart as well, which runs along the bottom of the screen. So that's really useful on longer races, 30, 40 kilometers, which are quite hilly. So you can see what's coming up in terms of the course profile, and that will show the position of riders as well across the entire length of the course. So Simon Gregory on the Facebook chat, he's asking, is it worth continuing to pedal despite auto braking in the corners? Yeah, so there's a few different tactics there, depending on potentially how hard you are pedaling. So if you're sort of cruising around, then potentially you're not going to waste too many watts by just continuing to pedal through the corners. But if you're racing, then you certainly can take a little bit of a rest through the corners, just ease off slightly on the way in, and then maybe push a bit harder on the way out. I tend not to ease off completely just because of the way my flywheel works. So if it does come to a stop, it's then obviously quite hard to get the flywheel going again. So always keep it just turning a little bit. That will obviously vary depending on what trainer you are using. And if you're putting down a big chase, so say you're putting out 500 watts, then actually easing off does give you that momentary rest. I've seen it before, such as on the 8-bar circuit, which has a lot of corners that riders can attack a whole lap from the finish line, a whole kilometer out. Because there's so many corners, they can attack, get a quick rest around the corner, attack, rest in the next corner, and actually it breaks up that very hard effort and means that they can sustain that for the kilometer. So yeah, it's definitely, I think, worth auto braking. Easing off because of the auto braking around the corners. So sorry, we're still getting a little bit more of a geography lesson in the Facebook chat. So Chris O'Hearn saying Bulgaria is the white, green, and red. I think if it's the other way around, it's Belarus, but I'm not sure. I don't think we've got any Belarusian riders in this event, so we don't have to be too worried about getting that right. All right, so I've been chatting away there, so I don't know if the course profile has been called up again. But yeah, like I say, you can see it in the top right-hand corner, albeit slightly reduced in scale. So on the left-hand side, it looks like McDonald has been dropped whilst we've been chatting away about different nations' flags and the best ways to approach corners. So it also depends on the corner as well. So depending on the angle of the corner, so if it's a short 45-degree corner, then easing off doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But if it's the 180-degree like we have in the middle of this course, then you're in that corner for longer. So you certainly can get a benefit from easing off, especially as you approach that corner. And you can see in the top left-hand corner of the screen, the part of the heads-up display there, you've got power, you've got the cadence, and you've got the heart rate. So you can see there, when the power number is turning red in the top left, that means the avatar is braking, and that's when watts are being wasted. So you can look at that and you can start to get an idea of when you can ease off, when you can put the power down. So as you approach a corner, you'll start to brake. So you can be easing off 15 meters before that corner, cruising into it. And then once you've hit the apex, start putting the power down to push out of it. And you always want to be anticipating pushing out of a corner, because you can see here we're following D Tuttle. He's at the back of the pack. And as we go around that corner, it can get strung out. So you want to be getting ready to put some power down to make sure you're not getting dropped or getting gapped. And you can see there as they went around that hairpin, how the position of the riders ebbs and flows, with some riders on the outside and some riders coming through, taking the inside line. So all of these riders are on the same bike. Sorry, that's not true. Riders can be on different bikes, but all of the bikes behave the same. So it doesn't matter what equipment you choose. There's no performance benefits between different bikes. So it's all about the rider. It's not a case of unlocking different types of bike or buying better bikes because you've been riding for longer. They're all just aesthetics. So you might choose to have the Canyon bike because you have a Canyon bike at home, or you might choose to use the BMC because you've got a BMC, or because you like the colors. There's really no rhyme or reason. There is no TT bike, so they're all just road bikes, but again, there's no difference. There's no performance change by selecting one bike over the other or wearing a helmet over the other. So just choose whichever one you like the look of. So this has turned into more of a Q&A rather than a race broadcast. So let's try and bring you back up to speed on the action. So in the Class A race, we've got an attack off the front then by PDQ Coach, who is 40 meters ahead as he comes around the hairpin, down that sharp little drop, up the other side. Here we are with a little chase group behind. So 4 riders in the chase. We'll be seeing if they're going to be working together to try and pull PDQ Coach back. He has got a teammate in that group, which is Team A. His other teammate McDonald is off the back, so he's not able to help at the moment. So these 4 riders then are trying to close that gap back. It is coming down. It's now under 25 meters. But you can see that between them, they are starting to take turns. And 4 versus 1, you've got to put the money on the 4 there to pull that back. But PDQ Coach is doing well at the moment, just to stay away. And you can see that from the bar, so there's a coloured bar under the riders' names, and that's an indication of which power zone they're currently in. So PDQ Coach was generally in orange and red there, which means he's putting out a high level of power. And then as you drop down, you'll have yellow, green, and blue. So blue is your endurance zone, so very low power output, something that you can sustain for a very long time. Then you'll have tempo, which you can sustain for a bit shorter, but slightly higher output. Threshold, which is pretty much around about you sort of what you could hold for an hour, sort of FTP. And then above that, you've got your sprint and neuromuscular levels, which are sort of what you can hold for a minute and then what you can hold for 15 seconds. So as a rider, you can get these clues of how hard other riders are working. So here in the Class B race, we've got Wojtek and Schwartz off the front. We've got Spiridonov just trying to come across. He's just about to get there. He's maybe 5-10 meters behind. And then we've got a group behind of about 10 riders who are about 20-25 meters back. So those 3 riders off the front, they could be strong riders. We saw that Spiridonov, he won the first race on Tuesday. And if they start working together, as those 3 come together, you can see the red bars there. They were working quite hard. As Smith and Broadhead trying to come across, they're Smith is in the middle. He's trying to close that gap. He's sort of working on his own there. As they come round to a lapped rider there just ahead that they're just overtaking in the yellow and black kit. We've got Smith coming across, just using that lapped rider as get a little bit of draft and a bit of a springboard. And then he is sort of in between at the minute, sort of in the pain dangle zone, as we call it. He's not quite on that front group, and he's leaving the chase group behind, and Murtaugh's also in there. So we've got some real separation here. And if those two, Murtaugh and Smith, get across, and you'd have a group of 5 against a group of 6 or 7. But at the moment, it looks like these front 3 are managing to stay away. Smith isn't quite able to get across, and Murtaugh's perhaps just about to get reeled back in by that group. There's some real animation going on within this Class B group. As they come down that steep drop and then into this little climb out of the hairpin. Murtaugh just hanging about 10 meters off the front of that chase group, and he's about to get reeled back in then by that group. Smith is still not quite able to bridge across to those front 3. But certainly it's an animated race with riders attacking, riders trying to bridge across. So back to the Class A race, and it looks like PDQ coach was caught then, and it's all come back together for those front 5. We're not far off the halfway point now, just about 15 kilometers in to this 31-kilometer race. And it looks like Smith is still stuck somewhere in the middle of that, on that Class B race, and that front group is slightly deceptively grown in size. So I think there's a couple of lapped riders that are jumped onto that group of 3, which is obviously giving them a little bit of a benefit. In behind them, we've got a rather large group as well. It looks like, again, perhaps they've picked up a few lapped riders. So it's all maybe cancelling out in terms of the lapped riders. Hi there, Paul Nichols. Thanks for joining. Don't know if you're back on the bike yet. I know that you had a little bit of time off. So you're just getting your RGT fix with a bit of broadcast coverage. Paul has organised an event that's being run over the next 5 weekends. So Paul has recreated a magic road of the South Downs Way, which is actually an off-road route across the South Downs in the south of England. And he's split that up into 5 stages, and that's being run on 3 time slots every Saturday for the next 5 Saturdays. So the first one starts this weekend. So there's slots at 6 a.m, 12 noon and 6 p.m. Those are GMT times. And I'm just going to cut back to the race a minute, and it looks like they're going to get back on. Jarvis and Lopez there were just slightly gapped off the back. And I think Lopez is just about to get back on. There he is. He comes flying through into the screenshot and through to the front of the pack. So that was a bit of a scare there for Lopez, who is in a strong position following his result on Tuesday, where he was 3rd. So he'll be leading overall, I would imagine, after today's race, although PDQ coach was also there on Tuesday, so he might have something to say about that. So back over in Class B, and we have got Wojtek and Schwartz still out front. Spiridonov has dropped not quite right back. He's just there, actually. He's only 5 meters behind. And then our riders who were in between, they've been caught. And now it's Tuttle and Lana who are in this middle zone, trying to bridge across to those front 3, not quite able to break free of the chasing pack. And that pack not quite able to work together to bring that front 3 pack. It gets quite close as they come round the hairpin and then up this little lump. but it's not quite happening. Those front three are still able to stay away. They're doing well. So we are now past halfway. I think it's going to be an interesting finish in both of these races. That hairpin and that steep downhill followed by the uphill does give an opportunity for a rider to attack early, not leave it to a sprint at the end. They could go and use that as a launch pad for an attack. I'm sure we'll see some more animation in the Class A races. Each rider tries to get the jump on the others. And in the Class B race, we've got Spiridonov and Schwartz have now dropped Wojtek, who's dropped back 13, 14 meters behind. And then 20 meters behind them is the chasing pack. You can see them down the road. It looks like that pack is coming. It keeps looking like they're going to make the catch, as Wojtek and Spiridonov and Schwartz just managed to regroup, the three of them, and they're still now holding off this group. It was up at 50 meters. It has dropped down a little bit. It seems to ebb and flow a little bit with the course and this little climb into this drop and then back out the other side. This pack is still working well together. It looks like there's been another casualty though, with Smith just falling off the back of that pack. And that's these three at the front. They're putting that pressure on, and it looks like it's about to all come back together. Schwartz and Spiridonov have been caught. Wojtek is having one last little dig to stay off the front, but no, he's also now been caught. And Dring is he going to counter-attack, or is he just going to sit up and let the pack regroup? Yeah, so it's all going to come back together now then. And this group of 12 or 13, probably, I imagine, you might get an attack out of it, or they might just be sitting in thinking that was quite a hard chase. Let's just have a couple of laps breather before we go back at each other. Or you might find one strong rider who's actually just been having a nice tow, feeling quite fresh, and they might just give it a little dig, knowing that some of those riders are feeling a little bit sore from that effort. Although it's Schwartz, who looks like he's going again off the front there. So another attack by him. He's obviously feeling strong and not quite sticking there. So back over in Class A, we've still got our 5 riders all grouped together. Looks to be fairly settled, not seeing any big attacks, trying to keep an eye on both races. And so far it's fairly, I won't say it's easy going because they are strong riders. I'm sure they are motoring, but it's not attack and defend. It seems to be just everyone sat in at the moment. But as we approach the finish line, so we are 12 kilometers out, so 10 laps to go, I'm sure we will start to see a few more attacks as riders think about going early and trying to create a bit of a gap. Because sometimes you will find that if a rider goes early, the pack of 4, if they time it right, if it's only 3 or 4 laps from the end, that group might be thinking, oh, I don't want to put the effort in to close it down because that will leave me a little bit tired for the sprint. So they might look around and leave it to the others. And all the time that they're doing that, that rider on the front is pulling away. So we've got onboard footage here now then from Team A in the Class A race. And he is just being overtaken there by Lopez and Jarvis as they come up to that finish line. You can see there's actually the gradient there is a little 4% bump before it then levels out for the last 100 meters or so. So it's not going to be a completely flat run into that line. So that will have an impact on the sprint and when riders want to launch that sprint. If you think about it, you've got maybe a 15-second maximum effort for a sprint. And if you're going on the flat, that's maybe 200 meters. But if it's downhill, then you could be going from 300 meters because your speed is going to be higher, so you're going to get to the finish line quicker. But if it's uphill, then perhaps you don't want to be going until only 120 meters from the line. So it's all factors that you need to think about. And sometimes that's why it's good just to go early and take all of that out of consideration. But when you have a crit course like this, you've got 25 laps to think about it, try different efforts as you go around. You might even try a couple of false sprints just to get a feel for it, see when's the best to go. And looks like Jarvis is just going to get back on to this group of 4, although Lopez is pushing hard at the front, trying to string it out. Maybe he's just seen that Jarvis is struggling a little bit there, and he knows that if he can keep the pressure up, Jarvis is out of the draft. He might just lose that draft completely and the elastic might snap. But you can see the red bar under his name. He's pushing hard. He's trying to get back across, get around that corner. It's only a few meters. I would imagine he's going to get back on. Partly because those 4 riders, there's not a concerted effort from the 4 of them to try and push on. So that is allowing Jarvis just to regain and come back in. So it's all back together, possibly on the Class B race. Looks like it is, yeah, all in one group here. We have seen a few attacks. We've seen quite a number of laps in the middle of the race where we had a few riders off the front, but it is currently together. And as I say that, we get a couple of attacks on the front. Lana now giving it a go with Voltec, who we've seen already been animated. And then Dring and Tuttle also coming across. So we've got a little group of 4 there, just creating a 10-meter gap, 15-meter gap. Be interesting to see if they're able to get away. But as it drops down here, the speed of the pack really does increase, and it does close it back up quite quickly. And then also with this uphill section, they are able to sort of springboard up there, maintain that speed, and then launch over the top as Spiridonov there comes back round to the front. Broadhead now on the front. We've got 11 riders in this front group. Yeah, 11 riders. And then Smith and Hutchins are about 300 meters back. And then there's another few groups about, well, 1,500 meters back. So they're well down out of contention now. But there will still be points on offer for them. So there's points down to 20th place. So between themselves, they're going to be wanting to fight to pick up as many points as possible. So 3/4 of the way through the race now. So around about another 11, 12 minutes or so in the Cat A race. And they're pretty much level pegging in the Class B race, both of them pretty much right at the same distance. So even though Class A has fewer riders, they are clearly riding at a slightly higher wattage and being able to cover that distance just as quick as this big group of 11 riders. As we see another little attack off the front there, Lana again making another effort, attacking in the same place that he did last lap. Is he going to be able to make it stick this time? No, it comes back together then. It seems like coming around the start of the lap, it's uphill a little bit. It's giving riders a little bit of an opportunity just to stretch their legs. It's 2-3%. So you can just about make a little bit of an effort and string things out, but then it comes back together on the downhill. As we see May and Rusanek here with a 15-meter gap. So PDQ coach there using the slipstream of the other 2 riders to get a good launch across. He came from behind Lopez and Jarvis there to springboard across. And now they also have joined him and that group's come back together. You can see starting to get animated now as we enter the last 6 laps or so of this race, of both races. And it's gonna, being so close, we're going to be watching both sprints at the same time, I imagine. Which we might have to make a choice on which one we're going to show you. We could leave both up, or we might show you Class B, as that's got the most riders in it. You never know, by then Class A, we might see it start picking up. Obviously, the good thing with the ZMS broadcast is we are able to show multiple races at once. But we will see, we might get a solo break in Class A, so we might be able to call that one early. Or even in Class B, we could see some riders going early. We have seen it very animated. But yeah, surprising quite how close together it is, really. So just riders, I think, just holding their nerve at the moment. Not wanting to go too early, just thinking, right, 6.2K to go. That's probably a sort of 9-10 minute effort. That's probably a bit too long. You might start thinking actually 5 minutes to go, 3 laps. That could be a sustainable effort. If the pack behind don't react straight away, you could get the jump and maybe even then have a little bit of effort left if you did get caught for a sprint. So we now see Broadhead. He's now making an effort on that front part of the lap. 25 meters already he's put into the chasing group, just using that terrain. But now he's on the slightly downhill bit into the hairpin, and that's where we see the speed of the pack pick up, because they've got the numbers and the draft benefit off each other. As he comes around, this is Broadhead, still actually just extending his lead a little bit there. He's keeping the power on. But as they come down that steep bit, the pack really does gain momentum. You can see that it's gone from 40 meters to 10 meters. And here they come streaming past. So if you're a rider in Class B, you might be just keeping an eye on that and thinking, well, if I do go early, I'm going to struggle to stay away. So perhaps I'll just sit in the pack, let others maybe do that. But there's Schwartz, look, he's come across, he's leapfrogged, and now he's pushing along that start-finish straight. He's up over 7 watts per kilo, trying to create some separation, trying to put the other riders under pressure all the time, just softening them up a little bit, every attack, making the riders work. Some of them are going to be burning matches just to stay in contention here. And that might just soften them up a little bit for the sprint. So I think what we're going to do is stick with both races at the finish. I'll try and commentate on both at the same time. As once again, we see it getting strung out on this start of the lap. Under 4 laps to go now. Wojtek, who we've seen be very animated, the Czech rider. You can see his numbers on the left-hand side next to his name is watts per kilo there. Turning red, that means he's at least 120% of his FTP effort, which he won't be able to sustain for too long. But it does mean he's putting in an effort to try and separate things. As we go back to Class A, where it is slightly strung out. That corner, an opportunity to attack, that little hill afterwards as well. Another little opportunity. Again, it's just a little bit of a jostle between those Class A riders. It looks like the pace on the Class B has just slightly picked up. They've slightly just edged ahead in the distance over the Class A riders. They were a few meters behind, but now it looks like they're just slightly ahead. Not that these two classes are in direct competition with each other, but it's just interesting to compare and contrast the two pack sizes and the relative strengths. You can see how on the right hand side there they passed under the start finish banner slightly quicker than the riders on the left hand side of the screen. Broadhead once again leading them up that 3% gradient. Not so steep that you lose a huge amount of draft benefit, but enough that you do just have to put the effort on for a little bit, just 10 seconds or so, just to make sure you're not getting gapped. You might see an attack from Class A up there, because if you can get away, you then are ensuring that the riders behind you aren't getting your draft benefit. Couple of riders there at the back of that Class A group just having to work hard to try and stay in contention. It would be a shame for them individually if they get dropped at this stage so close to the finish line. 3 kilometers to go, so around about 2.5 laps, and you can just see there just behind two riders, Brunelli and Broadhead, who has been very animated, just ever so slightly gapped off the back of this group. So Class A, all fairly close together, or very close together, I should say. But I was just looking, I was just sort of pausing because I was thinking 2 laps to go. Will we start to see some more attacks, or are they all just going to sit in and wait for a sprint for the line? I'm not too familiar with the riders in that group, so I don't know who the strongest sprinter is. As we enter the penultimate lap, Spiridonov, who was in the Gran Fondo National Series last Sunday and was doing well in that event, again launches a little bit of an attack off the front. He's just trying to get away. Schwartz and Voltek also going with him, trying to bridge across. If those three get away again, that could be dangerous for the pack. We have seen that they were able to hold off the pack for several laps in the middle of the race, and we've only got 2 kilometers to go. So if they can get away now, there is a chance that if the pack doesn't work together, they could stay away. Voltek, who was up there with them earlier in the day, is leading the chase. And he's got a little bit of a gap over Brunelli, who managed to get back into that group. But it's still Schwartz and Spiridonov who are off the front. So Voltek, Spiridonov and Schwartz, they have got a good little lead now over the following riders. As we enter the final lap then, it's looking good for those guys. As Wojtek now jumps off the front in the Class B race. These three, they've got a 100-meter lead. So your money would be on one of those three at this stage of the race. But Wojtek pushing it. And in the Class A race, it's May and Rusinek with a slight little gap over the other three, only 10 metres or so. Might come back together, we shall see. They're slightly behind in terms of road position. So Wojtek, he's coming up to the penultimate corner. He's up over 500 watts. He's got that 20-metre lead at 250 metres to go. Spiridonov and Schwartz then are coming up behind. They're all pushing. Schwartz's come back into second. They're inside the last 100 metres, 50 metres to go. Wojtek's going to take it. Schwartz is going to take second and Spiridonov is going to take third. And Tuttle has broken out of the chasing pack, possibly to take fourth. And in the Class A race, it's going to be a photo finish. I think that was, it looks like it might have been Jarvis from PDQ coach and then Lopez being your top three in the Class A race. Well, that was some good racing in both categories there. In the Class B, we saw that early break with one lap out from those three that we'd seen throughout the race being fairly animated. There we have it, confirmation then of the Class B results. So Wojtek in 45 minutes, 36 seconds, 4.14 average. That's his watts per kilo. With Ben Schwartz in second, 1.3 seconds back, pretty much the same watts per kilo, pretty consistent. And then Edgaras Spiridonov just slightly behind Schwartz at 3.67. So he was riding perhaps a bit more efficiently than those front two, but wasn't quite able to make it count, finishing third. But a good podium for him, following up from his win on Tuesday. So he's going to be, I imagine, leading the series leaderboard. And then 10 seconds back, they did manage to put in a pretty good gap at the end there. It was, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 riders, all within 2 seconds of each other there. And then Broadhead down in 10th place, 6 seconds further back there. So you can see how those attacks at the end really did start to break it up and cause it to fragment. And then in the Class A, look how close that is. Kieran Jarvis taking the win from PDQ coach. I said it would be a photo finish. Look too close to call. 0.001 second. And then Raul Lopez in third, 0.091 seconds back. Rusinek in fourth, and then Tim May